Judicial Watch is suing Biden's Department of Justice for access to Special Counsel Robert Hur's transcripts. Hur issued a report in February about Biden's mishandling of classified documents. It concluded that Biden is too senile to have committed a crime that would be punishable. We'll see. Hur characterized Biden as a, quote, well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory. Therefore, Hur declined to charge Biden with a serious felony on those grounds. So Biden did do something wrong. He just can't be held accountable because his brain is, well, resembles something approaching tapioca pudding, as best I can discern. Nothing to worry about, though. The leader of the world's most powerful country is just simply too dim-witted to be guilty of a crime, but he is apparently sufficiently witted to lead the United States in the face of all its enemies. On its face, that's already damning for Biden and humiliating for America. But there's more in these transcripts that could perhaps further expose Biden. That's what Judicial Watch wants to know. That's why they're suing for those transcripts. And joining us now is Chris Farrell. Chris is the Director of Investigations and Research at Judicial Watch. And Chris, it is awfully good to have you with us. It seems that President Biden is the beneficiary of a highly humane special counsel who thinks that a jury would just simply fail to prosecute him because he is so dim-witted. Is that your upshot as well?
It is. It's very funny that the last three people to run for president, Clinton, Trump, and Biden, have all had these claims of, security improprieties with regard to classified documents. President Trump, it isn't true because he's protected by the Presidential Records Act and he has absolute unreviewable authority to take whatever records he wanted. I know that because Judicial Watch has already litigated that matter in the U.S. District Court in D.C. And so that's established law, and they're twisting it around on its head to go after Trump. While the other two, who had no authority whatsoever to keep classified records, Clinton and Biden, they apparently get a pass. There's a different standard of justice for those two. It is very bitter. It's a really cynical, politicized twist. And so Trump is going to be put on trial in a Soviet show trial style. And Biden gets a pass because he's sitting in his interview making car noises on 2 or 3 occasions, like a 7-year-old boy playing in grammar school. It's inexplicable, other than just the gross corruption that is here evident in Washington, D.C.
Corruption, no problem. Everything else he does, no problem, and including stealing documents. Because, and Chris, that's something I've got to get to here.
Yeah.
Robert Hur didn't want to get to that, but the reality is he's the one who had to steal the documents to get them. They weren't laid in his hands. They weren't boxed up by the National Archives.
Right.
This guy had no right to them whatsoever. And yet there's no penalty. There's no suggestion that he stole them. Why not? Because he could not get them any other way.
Right. He's been stealing documents for decades, literally. He stole documents while a sitting U.S. senator. And then obviously while he was vice president, he stole more records. He didn't secure them. He got, that ridiculous evening press conference where he appeared completely befuddled once again. He talked about how everything was in a file cabinet that was locked or lockable. And that's another lie. They were laying in a broken up cardboard box in his garage, top secret documents. And so those documents were stolen by Biden. You can infer from his testimony, they were stolen by him so that he could prepare a book. He was giving those secrets to his ghostwriter, because what better way to have an interesting, exciting book than to juice it up with some presidential secrets that he stole out of the White House while he was vice president. And so he directly financially benefited from his theft of these documents that he leaked out to a ghostwriter to juice up a book. I mean, you can show the direct financial benefit from his stealing the records.
I love his exchange with the ghostwriter, saying, "Here are the documents that I stole," in parentheses, "but be careful because I stole them and they're classified, but here they are." I mean, on no level does that make sense. And on no level does it make sense that Hur and Merrick Garland and the entire rancid bunch at the corrupt Department of Justice didn't take note that he had stolen those documents. And the national media are happy to report that he did not take good care of the documents in his possessions, that he detained those documents, that he retained those documents, but he didn't apparently in their minds steal those documents, as if there was some magic process by which he got them. That magic process comes down to, grand theft auto, or in this case, grand theft classified documents. It's just beyond ignorance what we're watching unfold here.
And compare that very markedly with President Trump, who had every right to every document that is in his possession because of what's called the Clinton sock drawer case, which is a Judicial Watch case that is the only standing legal decision on presidential records. And it's very specific. The judge ruled that presidents of the United States, when they leave office, have an absolute, unreviewable right to any records they want to take with them, classified or unclassified. And both the National Archives and the Congress have no right whatsoever to second-guess the president. That's the ruling. That's the law. And you see what Trump is being put through. And I'll also call your attention, or at least have you remember, that even the Justice Department will admit that President Trump entered into a conference room at Mar-a-Lago. He had his staff and his attorneys in the room. There were FBI, DOJ, and National Archives people in the room. The president came in. He gave everybody assurances of full cooperation. He told his staff to talk to the government people, do everything we got to do to make sure this is all done right, cooperate fully. That was the president's direction to his staff and to the people from Justice and National Archives. I don't know what additional clarity you need when the president comes into the room, meets all the parties, tells them to cooperate, make sure everything's done right, and then he leaves. How is that confusing? How can that be misinterpreted as being uncooperative or not compliant or some other nonsense? It's a lie.
Yeah, well, the Biden administration has been lying throughout. The Department of Justice has been lying throughout. Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, has been lying throughout. Jack Smith lies. There's only one person not lying here, and that man is President Donald Trump. The reality is that somebody needs to tell the Secret Service to slap the FBI agents upside the head when they come calling, because this is just ignorance on its face. To be putting a former president through this, and it is unconscionable that it has dragged on this long. The Supreme Court has a chance here to make all of this right. It can do so by making a finding on immunity, absolute immunity for former presidents, in doing their official duty, as President Trump has been doing throughout. But the Supreme Court has been cowardly and just simply unwilling to put their foot down and say this is the way it is, and send the braying jackal Jack Smith off whining into the night. Why not do that?
Yeah, I don't have an explanation other than just sort of the timidity and the reticence of the Chief Justice. Remember, he's the same man that claimed that there were no such thing as Obama judges and Trump judges. He wishes to, well, it's it's false and misleading to even make that sort of an assertion. That's why presidents have the authority or have the privilege of making those appointments. Of course, there's philosophical differences between left-wing and conservative judges, or justices in this case at the Supreme Court. But, you know, one of the things I think that's really important about the litigation that we filed is not just the release of the transcript, but we want the video. You know, a picture is worth 1,000 words. There's one thing reading the transcript of Biden going back and forth with Mr. Hur and his prosecutors, his investigators. There's something else quite different in seeing how Biden comported himself. What were his behaviors? How did he act? Yeah. There's so much, you know, so much of communication is nonverbal. So one thing is reading the transcript, but let's see how Biden acted and reacted to the line of questioning. And I think that will also be a very interesting visual for the American public to understand where Biden's coming from, especially when he's sitting at the desk making car noises.
Well, making car noises. We also know that his whole concoction of a theatrical scene in which he basically says to her, "How dare you? My son, I know how when he died and how he died," and that all of that scene was entirely a imagination of the president and nothing better. He is a coward, and he is also a lying coward. And that, I think, is sort of the conclusion that we're going to have to leave this on. Chris Farrell, thanks so much. We look forward to seeing what Judicial Watch gets. As always, thanks for what you're doing. Chris Farrell and Judicial Watch.